everyone, it's Monica. Welcome back to Homeschool Voices. In today's video, I am going to be talking about the most important component to an excellent education, and that is reading. It might really sound simplistic, but it's not. Basically, all knowledge that you will ever have comes from reading. But if you are going to obtain knowledge, you have to be good at reading. Reading has to be easy for you. Now, how do you get good at reading? How does reading get easy? It happens with practice. A lot of practice, but there's a little more to it than that too. But let's just start with practice. So, I am a proponent of teaching your kids to read early. You can make it funsy if you want. You can put little note cards around your house. You know, you can write the word door on doors. You can write the word refrigerator on the refrigerator, the word stove on stove. You can play little games when you read books with your kids and say, let's find all the thes. If you can find 10 thes, you can have a chocolate chip, something silly like that. You can play games, you can have fun, or you can not be creative and just teach them whether they like it or not. But I'm telling you, even if they don't like it, neither of my kids liked learning to read at first, and now they both read a lot. The reason they read a lot is because it's easy for them now. Because they put in so much practice at an age that they don't even remember really anymore, that now it's just super easy for them. And when things are super easy for you, you want to do them. You find easy things relaxing. You find easy things comforting. Take into account that reading is also entertaining, and if it's easy as well, you're going to choose that. You're going to want to do that. Now there's another component, and that is making reading sort of a culture in your home. So, I speak from experience, okay? I'm not being preachy. I didn't grow up reading very much. My husband did. My husband is well-read, and I could see the difference. Reading's easy for him. It's easy for him to read things and retain things. It's easy for him to focus. It's not easy for me to focus. It's difficult. But my kids, now that COVID is here, it's a little different. But when my husband was working, he was gone most of the day. So the adult that my kids saw most of the time was me. And there's a long period of time where they saw me on the phone. And kids want to do what their parents do. They want to copy them. And of course, they wanted to be on the phone. And I recognize that. You could see it. They're just little copycats. That's what they do. And so I said, this isn't good. I want them to be reading, but they're copying me on the phone. Well, I want them to copy me reading. Okay? Your kids have to see you read. If it's hard for you to read, it's not that reading's not fun. It's not that it's hard. It's that you haven't had enough practice either. And does it make you stupid? It makes you part of a system and part of a culture that hasn't valued reading or education. And you can change that, but it takes time. But if you just remember that the reason that you're doing this is for your kids, because you love them and you want them to have the right example, it's not so hard. So even if they can see you read for 10 minutes, even if you're pretending to read and you're not really reading and you're thinking about something else, that would be better for you to read. But you know, have them see you reading. Another thing is read to them at night. I have a 10 and a 13-year-old, and we still read at night. My husband reads and I read. We both read. It's not that they can't read. They've both been reading well since 5 years old. I mean, I started teaching them at 3. They've been reading pretty well since 5 years old, both of them. It's not about their ability to read and can they read to themselves at night. It's about spending time together as a family. It's a warm fuzzy. It's quality time. And they associate that with reading every night. It's a major part of their lives. And that's just one way that we have a culture of reading in our family. And me more and more trying to read in front of them, having tons of books available all the time. Before COVID, it was kind of a special thing for us to go to the library all the time. I mean, at least once a week, if not every other week, and my kids really miss it. kind of makes me sad now because that was a major part of their childhood. And that was another way that we made reading a big thing in our family. So your kids need a lot of practice and a lot of exposure. They have to read a lot. They have to start early. So you don't want them to get to 8, 9, 10 years old and have difficulty reading. You can work with that and you can still have great results, but it's not ideal. Ideal, if you're gonna have a rough phase, or you're gonna have a difficult time, ideally that's when they're 3, 4, 5. Get too much older, they start to compare themselves with other kids. Even if you tell them not to, they'll still do it. And they'll think that they're not capable. They'll think that reading is hard. Sometimes they'll think they're stupid. And you don't want that. And you can avoid that by teaching them early. They won't even remember it if they didn't like it. And you can be creative and you can make it fun. But for my kids, and I would recommend for yours too, even if they develop some sort of negative idea about sitting down and learning to read, do it anyway. Wait for them to get a little more positive, and I mean like sit there on the couch and wait. I don't mean like wait another year. I mean just sit and wait for their attitude to improve and say, hey, we're going to practice for 10 minutes and then we'll be done. As soon as you're ready, we'll start. That's what I did. And, you know, it has really, really paid off. So I've spoken a lot about how you can get your kids to read and the importance of reading being easy and there being a culture of reading in your home. But why is reading so important? I mean, can't you learn a lot from videos? Can't you learn a lot just from doing things? Okay, so let's talk about why reading specifically is very, very important. One reason why is that it increases your attention span. Watching videos actually decreases your attention span. And I'm not saying there's not a place for videos. My son learns so much from videos. He actually built a drone. And he did that entirely from watching videos, from researching every little aspect of it on videos. And so there's a place for it, okay? But every little cut, I do it in my videos, every little cut is like a reward. And what I mean by a cut is when, you know, you cut the video and it switches to another spot. That's a little reward for your brain. And your brain wants to expect constant rewards. It comes to expect those rewards. That shortens your attention span. When you play video games, it really, really shortens your attention span. Movies, TV, all those little cuts shorten your attention span. Reading, on the other hand, you have to sit there and you have to just settle in, and you really have to develop a longer attention span. And you can develop it. It doesn't have to be there right away. And that's one of the beautiful things about reading. Another amazing thing about reading is that it helps build your vocabulary just naturally. You don't have to write down lists of vocabulary words and definitions. You just read, and occasionally in a natural way say, hey mom, what does this word mean? Or hey dad, what does that word mean? And naturally you develop a high vocabulary. I don't feel like I should have to argue why having a high vocabulary is a good thing. You don't want to be the kind of person that doesn't understand really kind of basic words because you just haven't read very much. You don't want that for your kids. Let's go into ideas. So typically in a school, kids learn from textbooks. Textbooks are written by a person or maybe a few people. And even if it's written by a few people, it's headed up by one person. That one person has opinions, ideas, ethics, a philosophy of some sort. And they can't help but present the material in a certain way that is in accordance with their personal beliefs. They can't help but do it. So if you get all of your education on biology or all of your education on U.S. history or world history from one textbook or even two textbooks, you have a very, very one-sided, incomplete view of whatever that information is that you're learning. So let's take history, for example. If you want to learn about U.S. history, you don't want to learn from a textbook. You don't want to learn from anything watered down from one source that is just filtering information and giving it to you. You want to read and read and read and read at least 100 books. I mean, maybe 200 or 300. So many books. Now, when I say that reading is the most important thing in a quality education, how do you have time to read all of those books if you're spending time doing watered down curriculums, answering nonsense comprehension questions, and not doing a good job, by the way? You don't have time. And so if you're not exposed to multiple different viewpoints, to reading about all kinds of different little scenarios, naturally, without a lot of effort from the parent or the teacher or the educator, just naturally making those connections and saying, hey, this happened at this time and that happened at that time. That's interesting. It just happens naturally. But you have to read a lot. And again, going back to what I said earlier, you're not going to read a lot if it's hard. And it's going to be hard if you haven't had a lot of practice. It's going to be taxing. It's going to be tiring. It's going to be a chore. History, science, literature, philosophy, logic, rhetoric, economics, all of these really important things for your kids to learn should all be learned from books and not from textbooks. I mean, if you learned a little from a textbook here and there, fine, but that you shouldn't rely on the textbooks to teach these things. A textbook, you know it's true. Just think about your education. The vast majority of you watching this, if you learn things from a textbook, I guarantee, just think of an example like chemistry. Very, very few of you remember anything about your chemistry class. You spent a whole year, even if you got A's, I got A's, you remember almost nothing. Almost nothing. I mean, a kid who has read a lot of books, and many of them that include, ideas about atoms and electrons and protons and neutrons. Maybe they do some experiments, a bunch of experiments that they thought were interesting. They're going to retain more. Even if overall they learned less, they'll retain more of it because everything that they learned was interesting, and they because it was interesting, they connected the ideas, they connected the dots, and in doing so, they retained more information. You're wasting your kids' time and your time when you do these curriculums instead of focusing on reading real books. Now, I'm just gonna offer a little bit of a caveat because I know there are circumstances where curriculums are useful and valuable. And I'm not discounting that. I know when you're new to homeschooling, when you have a baby, maybe you're taking care of a sick parent, all of these things make it very appealing and logical to use a curriculum. Okay, but I'm just talking about ideals. Like, where do you want to move? What direction is the ideal for us all to move as homeschoolers? And I'm telling you, it is reading. Even if your kid has difficulty, just the effort to move in that direction, even if that involves a lot of audiobooks, but still moving in the direction of actually reading a real book. And you can read on devices, on phones, on Kindles, but just be wary because I'm just gonna discuss one other problem. Screens, so videos, TV, movies, video games, they all have an inherent problem in that they are addictive. Don't take my word for it. I'm not going to go into the details. You are a homeschool parent or you're interested in homeschooling and you need to take the time to look into this yourself, and don't take my word for it. Go into Google. Better yet, go into DuckDuckGo. It's another search engine. And type in video games, drugs, video games, cocaine, video games, addictive. You're going to see it's very addictive. So going back to what we were talking about before, if you want your kids to choose reading, you don't want them to have a very, very addictive and appealing alternative at the ready at all times. If they have a phone that they can constantly play on, constantly look on the internet, constantly play games, if they have a video game console that they can just use at any time that they want to, and even with their free time, I don't mean all day, but if anytime that they are free, they are allowed to go play video games. Are they going to choose books? Are they going to ever read for fun? Because when something is super addictive, and screen time is super addictive, and my kids do have some screen time. I'm not saying that we're saints, okay? I'm just saying it is the reality. And you need to look at your kid's behavior and say, hey, is this super addictive thing affecting my child's desire to make choices that will better him or her in their lives? If your kids never pick reading as an enjoyable thing to do ever, you need to make adjustments. You need to really think about things and make adjustments. Because I don't know about you, but I've got addicted to screens. I've gotten to where I never really want to read. And I've had to work on it. I've had to say, man, this isn't good. I'm not being a good example, right? Because imagine when your kids are 17, 18 years old, 19 years old, you're done educating them. They don't have to read anymore. Would you really feel successful if your kids just kind of stopped learning, or all the information they ever got was from videos made by other people with opinions and agendas trying to influence your kids, but they never read anything because it was so hard and taxing, and they were so addicted to easier forms of entertainment, to more rewarding forms of entertainment? Videos have a place in this world. They have a place in education, but I'm just saying to be aware. How is it affecting your kids? Is it affecting your kids? So I hope I'm starting to make my case for why reading is so crucial and why you can really almost entirely educate your kids through reading books with science, with history, with language arts. Yes, you're going to have to do some math, I think a little spelling, some grammar, but you can accomplish most of their education through reading books, and you can do a lot of that with a local library, and it doesn't have to be that hard. You can even make a little spreadsheet. I like to do that just to have something to look at and say, yes, we did good stuff. I hope this was helpful. If you have any comments, please tell me down below. If you like this video, please click thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, please click subscribe and the notification bell next to it. In the meantime, happy homeschooling and have a great day.